Most fishes are either fusiform or flattened. These body forms help them in underwater locomotion. If you want to achieve a good swimming capability, your option is basically having a fusiform body, aka streamlined torpedo-like, or you're gonna be flat. Even some of the long ones are relatively flattened, and some of the giants too. That's probably why some people specifically adore fishes that aren't laterally flattened. Some people adore the tubes like pipefishes, seahorses, and sea dragons. Meanwhile, some people love the chungus, scientifically called globiforms. Pufferfishes and anglerfishes are the famous examples of that. Frogfishes are less famous, but I think they are popular enough. For this video though, I would like to introduce a relatively unpopular group of globiform fishes. By unpopular, I mean not many people know about their existence. This is a lumpsucker. Quite an intriguing name, huh? So, let me bring up the question. What exactly is lumpsucker? Lumpsuckers are bony fishes, ray-fin fishes to be precise. They are classified within the Perciformes order, which is the largest order of fish. Actually, it might even be the largest order among all vertebrates. Hence, so far, nothing special. Within this order, lumpsuckers are classified within the Cotoidae suborder, together with some relatively famous and intriguing fishes, like the snailfishes and blobfishes. In fact, snailfishes are the closest relatives of lumpsuckers. Lumpsuckers are classified within their own family, which is Cyclopteridae. If you are talking about lumpsuckers in general, then this is the level you are talking about. Kyklos means circle, and pteryx typically means wing, but in this case it means fin. By the way, I get it that reading this part of the name and trying to pronounce it as Kyklo would be really difficult for those who are used to speaking English. Even I find it awkward sometimes, so just pronounce it cyclo if that's easier for you. Anyway, they are named this way because their pelvic fins are modified into an adhesive disc on the bottom of their body, aka a sucker. Hence, the sucker in their lumpsucker common name. But the lump in their common name does not revert to them having a lumpy body. It actually dates back to 1558, when Gesner called them Lumpus anglorum. The lump part of their name refers to the fact that the dorsal fin of saitfish looks like a lump growing on their body. Lumpfish is also a common name for them, but I found lumpsucker funnier, and perhaps many people do so. You could use whichever you prefer. Speaking of Lumpus anglorum, that one with lump-like dorsal fin is actually a single specific species, now given the valid name Cyclopterus lumpus. The family itself has 6 genera and 32 species. All of them are northern fishes, and some of them can be found within the polar circle. Among the 6 genera, 5 of them are monotypic, only 1 species per genus. And I did say the family have 32 species. So yeah, 27 of those belong to one genus, Eumicrotremus. I personally think there is simply not enough research being done to their taxonomy, and if I'm being honest, there's not much research being done on them in general, because it's not an easy task. Getting some fresh specimens of certain species is difficult, so there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding their taxonomy. There were some publications suggesting some species to be moved out of Eumicrotremus genus, but some of those suggestions are unaccepted. Though one of them, which was published in 2020, is still uncontested in terms of its taxon validity, which is pro-Eumicrotremus, so that's quite something. Some authors like to classify them into 3 subfamilies, which are Liparopsinae, with only Aptocyclus as its member, Cyclopterinae, with only Cyclopterus as its member, and Eumicrotreminae, which includes the rest. Though some authors don't like to classify them into subfamilies, so you wouldn't see any mention about those in the publications of some authors. Those 3 subfamilies, and to some extent, all 6 genera, do have distinct enough characteristics that are easy enough to explain. So let's talk about it in the morphology section, coming up next. But before that, lumpsuckers can vary a lot in terms of size. Some of them are dwarfs, only reaching up to 2 cm SL. By the way, SL is standard length, and that basically means the length of a fish without the tail fin. Keep this in mind because it is often used when talking about fishes. Meanwhile, some of them can be quite big. with Ecopterus lumpus holding the record of 61 centimeters. That would be 30 times the size of the smallest lumpsucker species, which is quite something. On average, Ecopterus lumpus would grow to around 50 cm SL though, which is still quite something of course. Females are typically bigger than the males, so they do have sexual dimorphism. Like I said earlier, they are iconic for their pelvic adhesive disc, which is a modification of their pelvic fins. The other fins are quite normal though, meaning they do have a pair of pectoral fins, anal fin, caudal fin, and 2 sets of dorsal fins, technically at least. This would be a nice segue to the trait of each taxon. I did say sometimes they are classified into 3 different subfamilies, right? The trait of Liparopsinae is they don't seem to have the first dorsal fin. To be precise, the first dorsal fin is embedded onto their skin. Some individuals do have a slightly noticeable first dorsal fin, but the point is, their first dorsal fin is inconspicuous. There is only one species in this subfamily, which is Aptocyclus ventricosus, the smooth lumpfish. They are called the smooth lumpfish because they have naked skin, no tubercles, although they are not the only one that have naked skin. I'll talk about that later. Another trait that can often be observed on them is they often have pot-bellied look. In fact, ventricosus means bulging belly, pot-bellied, something like that. So yeah, quite easy to identify. Just look at their first dorsal fin, or at least where it should be. Next, subfamily Cyclopterinae, also with only one species, Ecopterus lumpus. This one has a lumpy first dorsal fin with a really thick skin, and basically that trait is enough to identify them. This species is not smooth. You could clearly see some horizontal bone plaques, and they actually have some bony tubercles on their posterior side. Now, let's move on to the Eumicrotraminae subfamily. These are the ones with quote-unquote normal dorsal fin. There are 4 genera in this subfamily. I'm gonna talk about Lethotremus first because it's the one that I'm the most unsure of. There were 2 species in this genus, but one of them was moved to Eumicrotramus. The one species left in this genus is Lethotremus muticus. First of all, I literally cannot find any photographic image of a living individual of them. I've seen some preserved specimens in publications, which I also couldn't show because I don't think those publications are available for the public, but still, like I said, no photographic image of a living individual, as far as I could find at least. As far as I read about their description, I only have one thought about them, which is, they are the normies among Lumpsucker. They don't have tubercles, nor bony plaques, or anything like that. They have normal dorsal fin, so nothing exceptional, which technically is good enough for identification. If this species is the only one that seems normal, then that is also a diagnostic trait after all. Do keep in mind though, I'm not exactly sure about that. I'm not confident enough regarding my understanding of this particular species, so take what I said with a grain of salt. One thing that I'm sure of is the meaning of their scientific name, which I find quite funny. Lethotremus means forgetting holes, because their body doesn't seem to have any hole, no pores visible on the side, inconspicuous gill opening, etc. And then muticus came from the same root as muted, but not in terms of sound. It's in terms of accessory, equipment, something like that. If you are familiar with the biology term mutic, that's what I'm talking about. In this context, they are called muticus because they don't have armor or anything on their skin, basically. So yeah, pretty normal. Next, Cyclopsis, with only one species, Cyclopsis tentacularis. Pretty easy to remember because they have tentacles throughout their body. These tentacles are pretty small, by the way, like curly tiny hairs basically, not like an eldritch horror kind of tentaculate. Now, let's talk about Eumicrotramus first. They have bony tubercles throughout their body. They got armor basically. Different species have different degree of armor. Some of them are quite spiny, kinda like a pinecone. Pinecone fish is also a thing by the way, but those are laterally flattened. This one though, now that is a pinecone. Well, not literally, but you know what I mean. And last but not least, the newly described, or at least the newly separated Pro-Eumicrotramus. The pro in its name basically indicates they are the prototype of Eumicrotramus. Kinda. They got armor, but they still got some characteristics of the less specialized Lumpsucker. You could see that they have the bony plaques line that Cyclopterus lumpus also have. They are like the transitional phase between the other lumpsuckers into Eumicrotremus, hence the name, Pro-Eumicrotremus. Okay, but right now, it might not make sense why I said that sentence just now. What do I mean by other lumpsuckers into Eumicrotremus? Why did I lump all of the other lumpsuckers together? Well, it is apparent in their ecology, so let's talk about it. If you read articles about lumpsuckers, it would most likely mention that lumpsuckers are benthic, demersal fishes that stays on the bottom of the sea. Well, that is technically true because, 27 out of 32 species are Eumicrotremus, and Eumicrotremus are indeed benthic. However, the other species are pelagic, swimming freely in the water column. That is why Eumicrotremus are considered derived while the rest are considered relatively generic among fishes. Though, like I said right at the start of this video, if you want to be a good swimmer, your choice is either a fusiform or compressed body, and lumpsuckers have neither. And so, they are poor swimmers. Because they are naturally slow swimmers, moving to a slow benthic life would not be a drawback for them. Perhaps that's even beneficial, considering how Eumicrotremus seems to be thriving and able to radiate into multiple species. Because they are poor swimmers, their diet consists of things that are slow-moving, like jellyfishes and comb jellies for the pelagic species. Meanwhile, the benthic species, aka the Eumicrotremus, feed on worms, mollusks, etc. But now, the question is, what exactly does their disc do? I mean, yes, it can stick to stuffs, which would be intuitive if they are benthic from the start, but why do they have it if their presumably basal members are pelagic? Well, many of them, maybe most of them actually, spawn in shallow water, and shallow water have stronger waves and things like that. But they are poor swimmers, hence having this adhesive disc helps them anchor themselves. That's especially true for their offsprings. During breeding season, males of Cyclopterus lumpus will turn red like this. Other species might also change color, but I'm not sure about that because there's not that much data on some species. Males will choose their breeding ground, or should I say breeding boulder, and they will become territorial. Females will also come to the shallow water, of course, and if they are interested, they will approach a male's breeding spot. The male will perform some kind of courtship attempt, usually wiggling their fins, and if the female is interested, it will lay the eggs on the breeding spot. This egg mass is also adhesive, by the way. After that, the male will release its sperms into the eggs, and then proceed to guard and tend the eggs until they hatch. It could take a long time, by the way. It could even take 4 months in some species. So that's quite the dedication for a fish. The adhesive disc is already developed while they are still inside the egg. So yeah, they do spawn with an adhesive disc. Youngs will live in the shallow water for a while, which is why most people would be more familiar with the young ones instead of the adults. They will then move to the deeper water as they grow. Because it takes a while for their eggs to hatch, observations on their reproduction are difficult. Hence, not a lot of publications on them. In fact, the first complete reproduction observation on Eumicrotremus was just published in 2025, and that's in an aquarium. By the way, I think I didn't specifically mention this, but some of them do live in deep water, which is why there is barely any observation on some species. Point being, we still need a lot of data to fully understand their biology, but that also means there's a lot to do. If you are interested in them, who knows, maybe you could be the one who will publish something about them in the future. But for now, let's just learn what is known. And that's all for now. Oh, by the way, apparently, the eggs of Cyclopterus lumpus are often used for caviar replacement, which is quite something. Anyway, enjoy your day.